everybody. Welcome to the podcast where we motivate, inspire, and drive with stories from entrepreneurs from around the country. That's right, folks. Straight from their mouths to your ears, this is Hustle City, USA.
What's up, America? It's the Texas real estate dude, and it's Tussle Talk time. We are live in Hustle City, USA, none other with Mr. John Alltech, Mr. Entrepreneur, CEO and founder of JLA Real Estate. John, how in the hell are you?
I'm good. Another fabulous day in the podcast room.
Yeah, we got a great guest today. Great guest. What you been up to, John?
It's busy. I mean, this time of the year, everything's going on. We got the holidays, real estate's booming. We finally got through this election, which kind of gets people back to their normal life. I actually want to get on Facebook again. So hey, I'm ready for the kitty cats and all the weird stuff we used to hate. Now we don't have to deal with politics.
Well, and you make an interesting point because I heard you in yesterday's training with some of your staff talking about keeping your groove through the holiday season, keeping your work going and not getting sidetracked with everything. And I was just reading yesterday that I want to bring up growth mindset versus fixed mindset. What would you say on that?
If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to have a growth concept. So, for me, getting stuck and being fixed in anything, whether it's your job, your health, your relationships, is just a bad situation. So being in growth mode 24/7, I think, is healthy. And the holidays are one of those times where people like to slow down because they're so busy with everything else.
That's correct.
And their business will suffer greatly. And if you're in retail, you love this time of the year. If you're an entrepreneur that's retail driven, this is your month. But for everybody else, they tend to like to take their foot off the gas. And with all marketing, if you slow down, it's going to take you 3 or 4 months to pick it back up. So really pushing the agents, and I push all entrepreneurs, don't take your foot off the gas over the holidays.
Absolutely. And I think our guest today, from what I know of him, has an excellent growth mindset. Mr. Christopher Kelso. Chris, thanks for being on the show today. What can you tell us about a growth mindset? Let's start there.
Well, and thanks for having me on here, by the way.
Appreciate you.
It's one of those things, having a growth mindset is imperative if you want to continue to grow. One of the things we talk about all the time is if you have a fixed mindset, what ends up happening is you become very stale.
That's right.
And if you become stale, guess what ends up happening? You can't end up going forward. Your business suffers, as John was saying right there. You have a lot of stuff that ends up taking place that becomes negative in your life. Whereas a growth mindset, what you end up doing is you're able to get out there, you're active, you're in front of other people, you're creating new ideas, you're being dynamic, you're differentiating yourself. And as John said, you can never take your foot off the gas. That's one of the things I think is imperative about it.
So let me ask you this. Those statements you made sound like things you've learned over the years. Take me back to a spot where you were just starting to learn some of those things. It's like, hey, I'm not going to work at Sears and Roebuck. I'm going to, this is what I'm heading for. When did that work for you?
I was always one of those. When I grew up, I with my father, I was always instilled to work. And so it was one of those things I always wanted to get a job. So when I was 14, I was asking my dad, what can I do to work? What can I do to work? I was very fortunate that at a very young age, my dad was an entrepreneur. And so at that time, he had different businesses in which he did business with. So I never forget, I finally was here in Houston, actually. It was a summer here in Houston. There was an old company here in Houston, an old ice cream shop called Cliff's Ice Cream, I think it was, or it was very, very good and well-known ice cream shops. We were here during the summer one time, and I told my dad, I said, I really want to work. And I thought I want to be an ice cream maker,
right?
But I just wanted to work no matter what. And so my dad brings me in and brings me up and in the Kirby store and says, this is Chris Kelso. He's not my son. Start him off on however you want to start anybody else off. And the manager said, absolutely. And when Mr. Kelso left, she grabbed me and walked me down. She said, now here's a mop and here's a bucket.
Those are some of the best lessons.
That
right there.
bathroom has to be cleaned every 15 minutes.
Oh, my God.
And I never forget that right there. I looked at it and I go, am I still going to be able to make ice cream? And she said, you'll work up to that. And I'll tell you what, the one thing I always got compliments on, those bathrooms were the cleanest bathrooms ever. Now, it sounds funny, by the way, but I took pride in making sure that they were the best.
That was going to be exactly what I said.
Right. And I still look at it today. You talk about a growth mindset. You have to do all the little things, no matter how high up you get, to be successful. And you have to always make sure that you're willing to get in the mud just like you are willing to get clean.
That makes me think, and maybe I associate in places other people don't, but do you ever go in those restrooms that say, please tell our attendants if the bathroom does not meet your specification, and it's the dirtiest freaking place you've ever been in? I was like, I'm not even going to waste my time telling anybody because they're missing something here, and you try not to touch anything and get out as soon as possible, right? I mean,
well, the worst is whenever you walk into the bathroom and it says all employees must wash their hands before exiting, right?
Right.
It's like, I don't want them to wash their hands. Have you seen the sink?
Absolutely.
And I see those all the time.
I love it. I love
And I'm
it.
like,
Fist bump with
yeah,
this
and I
guy.
look at it and I'm like, okay, I go, gosh, thank God this invention called, what's it called?
The hand
The
sanitizer.
antiseptic,
Yeah, the hand
is there right
sanitizer,
there because
yeah.
I can actually walk out with the sanitizer now because that sink I don't want to touch.
We may have just missed each other the last time we were at that place. I don't know what happened.
I think we did actually.
I love it.
But you see them more often than not. I
Yeah,
mean, you
absolutely.
really do. And I talk about you have to take pride in what you do, in everything that you do, and you also have to take ownership. Because
right.
one of the things I will tell you is ownership to me is just as important as pride. Because if you don't take ownership in it, then you're always going to push the blame down the
There was
area.
a Jim Rohn quote that I always loved, and I can't say it verbatim, but he said, if you'll work your job, maybe it was Napoleon Hill, if you'll work at your job like you own the company, then someday very well you may.
Right.
And a lot of people I find, and I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but they don't put that effort in. And it's hard to, maybe they're in that fixed mindset, so they're not putting that extra effort in.
So, and James nails that, and I think that's what makes Chris so good at what he does. And we didn't introduce Chris for what he does. He's more than a great speaker on the radio. Very well known in Houston as one of the top lenders. Runs a very productive lending company here, and that's how we know and love him. But he's known for so many things. So, Chris, talk more about what you do every day. Tell us how we obviously know you spent some time cleaning bathrooms. How did you get how did you get from cleaning bathrooms to running a very, very successful lending company?
Well, one of the things that I was very fortunate, as you mentioned, we sort of, to go backwards a little bit, we started off in that bathroom, and then from that bathroom, I was able to really learn a lot of things going forward. And every summer, I always worked until I was 16, then went to college, actually went to UT, graduated from St. Ed's, and all throughout that cycle, worked over at James Avery Craftsman, by the way.
Oh, nice.
And so got to know Jim Avery, the original Jim Avery, because I actually did a senior thesis in regards to him, and really got to see his concept and his model of working and what we did. And then went back to Mexico, lived in Mexico when I first graduated, had a big company down there in which we did a lot of systems and integration, and opened up multiple restaurants, including one in New York City. And so I've been sort of in that whole area of service.
You've been an entrepreneur mindset for a long time.
For a long time, and I tell everybody, one of the things that I absolutely love about what I do today is that it's not different than what you started off with. I wake up every day and I put my socks and shoes on just like you do, and I make the same phone calls that we all have to make, and I return the phone calls that you have to return. And when you make a mistake, I own up to the mistakes that you have to own up to. But more importantly is what we try to do every single day is be the best person I can be, so that my clients and so that their clients and that they can be represented in the best way possible. And it's all about, and the one thing I have learned all throughout, whether it be cleaning bathrooms, importing, exporting, products, working in the service industry in the restaurant, or doing mortgages, or working for the big companies like HP and Computer Associates, it's still all about building relationships. It's about doing the right thing all the time, and then building strong relationships that you can build upon and work with those individuals, no matter what industry you're in.
I
That's
agree
right.
with you.
I agree with that
And
100%.
we look at entrepreneurs, and we talk a lot here on our podcast about entrepreneurs. And I get a lot of questions from my friends and people that know me saying, hey, John, I want to start my own business. What's the key to success? And oftentimes I tell them it's not what you're selling or what you're making or what you're doing. It's who you're doing it with and the relationships that you have with the people around you. Not just the people that work for you, your consumers, the end user, the folks that you run into on social media. It's all about making sure that you have the right relationships, and because relationships makes it all work.
Oh, it really does. One of the things we used to always talk about, and this is very important, we tell everybody all the time, is, we ask, and ask anybody across the board, I say, are you in sales and marketing? And you can ask any employee this, and it's pretty amazing. The companies that are truly great, you ask any employee, are you in sales and marketing? That includes everything. And the ones that are truly great, from the receptionist to the person cleaning the floors, will say, absolutely. And you ask, who's your client? And they say, everyone. Because that's truly what it's about, by the way, is your client is everyone. And your company and the organization and the people you associate with all have to have that mentality. I'm a big believer about associating and affiliating with other successful entrepreneurs.
So there's a book I read recently, I think it came out sometime earlier this year, maybe last year, entitled To Sell is Human, by Daniel Pink, I believe. A little plug there if he happens to pick us up on the internet chat or anywhere. But he says exactly that, right? We're all in sales no matter what your role is. If you're a teacher, you're selling what you're teaching to your students, so they're on board with the program. So I like your concept there. It's
If
great.
you're married, you're selling.
Oh, every day, by the way. And you and I sold very well, by the way.
I did. I you know what? If you don't think I'm a good salesman, check out how hot my wife is. Like, I've been selling that for 22 years, and I am good at it, right?
I definitely understand.
You've got the same problem at your house.
Yeah.
So, Chris, take us down a path. You've got this fabulous mortgage company. You know, what are the things that you do every day? And we talked about building relationships. But what are the things that if you were an entrepreneur starting out today in any industry besides building relationships, what's something else that you would share with an entrepreneur that says, you know, definitely do your research here, or do your homework there, or be prepared for this? Give us something there that you've learned at the School of Hard Knocks, so to speak.
You know, it's pretty interesting. I've always said this is the following. You have to understand what best practices are in your industry. And that when I say best practices, that's across the board. I don't care if that's the products and services you sell or how you produce that widget. You have to have those best practices, products and services associated with it. But one of the things that I always have tried to do, and I still today, I tell everybody to do this, is be different in the way you approach everything. Don't do the same thing that everybody else is doing. And the reason why is, guess what? We talk about this all the time. If everybody else is doing the same thing and getting the same results, you could possibly do the same thing and you're going to get the same results. But if you truly want to grow outside of that mechanism of doing the same thing, be different. Run the opposite direction, I tell everybody. You know, do things, you have to have best practices. Mm-hmm. You have to do things that are right across the board, meaning you have to be ethical. You know, you have to have the right product. You have to have the right procedure. You have to be able to have the right customer service, etc. But from a sales and marketing perspective, stand out and stand above what anybody else would do. That's one of the biggest things, if I could give an entrepreneur who's starting off today, is get with somebody who has a best practice on product. Get with somebody who has a best practice on service or the way they do it. But then also think different and do something different.
Well, you have to define who you are in the marketplace. So
absolutely.
Right, absolutely.
Well, and I think that, you know, being the same as everybody else is boring. And I've got a new quote I've been using. Boring, it's just boring.
Right.
So let's not do what everybody else is doing, because, again, there are thousands and thousands, millions of entrepreneurs out here, and you can't keep doing what everybody else is doing and expect to rise above and beyond.
And I look at JLA, for example, and what you've done. You know, and you know, we talk about, you know, different businesses. We talked about this, you know, between the break. Look at where you are today. Yeah. You know, look at where you came from and why. When you and I sat down, when you had 5 agents, okay, and you and I spoke about this, and I said, you know, what are you going to do different? And you said, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I didn't say, what are you going to do the same as anybody else? What are you going to do different? I mean, right. that was the question. And you know, now 300 plus agents later, you know, probably even 400 by the time we get out of this podcast right now, you know, you've done it different, and guess what? Different has its successes to it.
It does, and yes, real estate's one of those industries that's forever old, right? And it's been doing the same thing for years and running at the same level. So wanting to be different, because I'm different by design. I mean, to know me is to know that I'm different, the way I act, the way I dress. I want to run a business that way, but it's also very refreshing for a lot of people. I get a lot of agents that come in here, and they're looking for different. I mean, they're wanting different, because what's the same out there isn't working for them anymore. And this millennial crowd, for people that are doing entrepreneurial work in the millennial world, well, they are way different. They think different, act different, see things different, and they're looking for that. So yeah, no, I agree with you on that, being different and standing out.
Well, and speaking of different, when I was doing some prior research, you know, prior to today's show, and English style equestrian riding. Somebody we know in common was telling me about that.
Yes.
Did you do some of that at one time?
I did, actually. So when I grew up, I was in Mexico the whole time, and one of the things I started at a very young age was riding horses, and so I did dressage and jumping, and so I rode for some really good equestrian clubs down in Mexico, and then my father ended up buying me a couple of German Westfalen horses, and actually rode them as well, competed, and had a great time. But, one of the things that taught me, by the way, and I tell this all the time, we have them, is, man, whenever you have an animal like that in which you have to train and feed and, be there every morning, it gives you a sense of pride, but it also gives you a sense of opportunity to know that you have a responsibility to do. And let me tell you, that responsibility to perform drives everything else, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, I still love riding today. I don't ride anymore, but if you go to my office, you'll see I've got a picture right in my office of me on one of my practice sessions. And the little thing about that, so you talk about something that happens. I've ridden all my life, and my trainer was a German, and so he used to always get on to me, and Chris, your hands are in the wrong position. And of all the pictures that are in my office, it's a picture of me jumping with my hands in the wrong position. And it reminds me, though, that, hey, guess what? You're going to make a mistake every day. All you have to do is, how are you going to fix it? What do you have to do to fix that and get it right back in the right position?
So how would you, and I believe you're sort of saying it already, but outside pursuits or other interests, having those and tying them into your business and maybe having that release outside of your entrepreneurship, or do you blend those together? Talk to me on that a little bit.
Well, I think everybody, you have to learn how to have a business and have a personal life. Mm-hmm. And so, because if you don't do that, if you don't take time for yourself, you will burn yourself out. And so, in my case, I've got two children. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. And this is their formation years. These are when they want to see daddy, and they want to see dad's around. And, and John's shaking his head because he's going through the same thing as far as that goes. And so, talk about the same thing right there. So one of the things that I try to do is, I am a marketer through and through. I love sales. I love marketing. I'm a big believer in marketing with a purpose. So everything I do has purpose behind it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm also a big believer in giving back. And I give back to the community. I give back to my family. I give back to other individuals. I mentor at different high schools. And so one of the things you have to do, you have to find a passion of yours. Mm-hmm. Whether that passion be your family or something you want to do afterwards, or a sport that you play, find that passion and make that passion work for you. If it can become part of your everyday routine that you do with your business, even better, right? Even better. Right. But if it can't, you have to find something to do outside of your normal business. Otherwise, you will become burned out. And let me tell you, it is so hard to come back from being burned out.
Right. That's a good point. John, would you speak on that?
Yeah, I see that a lot. You talk about 340, 350 agents here at JLA, and sometimes I have to take an agent aside and tell them, get back home. And you're doing really great. You're putting huge numbers on the board, but what's your purpose? What's your why? And if it's the sacrifice of your family or your health, that's another big one that people seem to sacrifice in entrepreneur world is, you can find time to go to the gym. I'm there every morning at like 4:30 in the morning. I don't want to be there at 4:30, but we're there at 4:30, right? And you've got to find that you've got that balance. And more people in the entrepreneur world are finding themselves burning out, not because they don't love what they do, is that it's all that they do. And I also say this, you don't want to be that person that can only talk about what you do every day. You've got to be that person that others want to hang out with, they want to be around, that they want to enjoy. If all I talked about was real estate 24/7, nobody wants to hang out with that guy, right? Sorry, nobody does. So being that, and it's hard because when you start a business and you're an entrepreneur, you go head first. You jump off the cliff and you hope that you sprout wings before you hit the bottom. And when you put everything you've got into it, it can encompass you and engross you, and
very much so.
It will eat you up.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, in your entrepreneurial journey, what's the one thing that scared you the most through the whole process? Talk to us about that.
I've always been one of those that I love challenges, right? But I will tell you, when I was very successful in the IT world, very successful in cost management, and was working for a company called iForecast, and I got a call to say, hey, would you like to come and get in the mortgage industry? And my first question was, well, what do you do and how much does it pay? And they said, we provide financing for people, and we pay nothing. It's 100% commission.
Sounds great.
Exactly.
Hook me up.
I'm like, wow.
Hey, let's sell that to your wife.
Exactly, right? So actually what was funny was I said, you know what, sign me up for it. And I went home that day and I told my wife, I'm getting in a new career. And she said, how much does it pay? And I said, nothing unless I'm really successful. And she said, what? The scary part I'd say is the scariest thing I ever had was when I got into the mortgage business, I knew zero. I really did not know anything. I dabbled in the FHA Streamline Refinance, but it was with the big team out of Dallas. So the only thing I was required to do was have them sign 3 pieces of paper, and I FedExed everything in. And so it was getting to truly understand at that point the ground level of impacting somebody's life. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, it's something that over the past 14 years I take extreme precaution to make sure that we do the right thing. Because let me tell you, a lot of times it's the first time they're ever going to buy a home. It's the largest purchase they're ever going to make. It's a financial decision that we talk about. Mm-hmm. You have to understand and know what you can and can't do. And more importantly, how you can give them the correct information to make them make that information. And that was probably the scariest part is, how do I know if I'm saying the right thing? How do I know if I'm giving the right advice? I know I'm a smart guy. I know what I would do personally. And then one day it clicked on me a couple years into the business. I said, you know what? I'm going to let them know this is what I would do personally.
Right.
And as long as you're honest in that concept, you're going to be great for the rest of your life.
Sort of that consultative sales approach and just talking them through the process with all the knowledge you have or getting additional knowledge if you need it for them.
That is correct. You have to do that. And I'm a big believer in reading. I mean, I love reading. I love different books. I'm a big believer of the positive mindset. I'm a big believer of Tony Robbins. Where I'm at now, we have Andy Andrews as our coach. And so it's absolutely phenomenal, all the things that we go through. And I tell everybody, another thing we talk about is never be too prideful to learn from somebody else. Absolutely. Never be too prideful to get a coach. Never be too prideful to read something that's outside of the normal aspect of what you would normally read. Because let me tell you, once you get into that mindset of learning from others, and the biggest thing that I've always said that we always benefit from, and Henry Ford said this, et cetera, is some of the biggest benefits you're always going to get is learning from people outside of your industry.
I agree.
And so get to know that, learn from people outside, find out how they're doing, be inquisitive, ask those questions, because the more you find out what's going on outside of what you normally had to do, you can make yourself better inside of what you're doing.
And you'll know how that impacts what you're doing. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on in other industries, how does that impact my industry?
You brought up something, though, that I think is crucial, and that's attitude. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the positive attitude. And one thing from the first minute I met you, where we clicked, is you're a positive dude, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a choice every day. We're going to wake up and we're either going to be in a good mood or a bad mood. Now, there's always some things affecting that around us, life around us, but it's a choice. It's what you want to do with it. And so you're talking about being open, it's having an open attitude, being positive, being, and that's something that entrepreneurs have to focus on. Oh, yeah. And learn from those around you. I mean, I golf with a couple good friends of mine, and they're entrepreneurs, right? And they're in the business, and no business like ours. One sells wood. He imports wood, which I have no idea what that even looks like. But the more we talk about it, the more I learn from what he's doing and how he operates. And we share a lot of things, and the two have nothing in common, real estate and wood. But yeah, learning from those people and listening. So one of the hardest things, especially for me as I'm a talker, is to listen and hear what they're saying and learn from them. And I think that's something that you and I have always enjoyed. Every time we're together, we're just brainstorming and throwing things against the wall. Oh, yeah. And we look up and we've been talking for 45 minutes about nothing. It's nuts.
And that's a funny thing you say that, because I tell everybody, I live my life with on the positive side of things every day. I tell everybody this is positive thinking leads to positive action, leads to positive results. Yep. It's my 3 Ps, and it's thinking, attitude, and results. And you're right, though. Being positive is a state of mind. It's an opportunity you can choose to do or choose not to do. And as an entrepreneur, you're going to have moments in which you're going to sit there and wonder how you're going to put on the lights. How are you going to pay your next bill? Yeah. How are you going to pay your employee that's due this Friday, which is tomorrow, for example? Right. You're going to sit there, right? And let me tell you, it makes a world of difference how your employees, how your clients, how your business partners see you in those moments.
Well, and that problem solving is part of it that I really like. It's like oh man, I don't know that I can do this, but I better hurry up and figure it out real quick because Friday is tomorrow, right?
Right.
So bring us to the Rat Pack. You had a great interview the other day, and I listened to it with Bill Champlin. I thought how was that having him in your studio?
It was a lot of fun. Bill was very neat. He's the old Chicago guy. He sang with Peter Cetera and all the old guys right there. And I say old guys, I mean, he's definitely up in age nowadays.
Sure.
Phenomenal guitarist, phenomenal pianist, great songwriter. It was really neat. We talk about this. The Rat Pack show is about nothing, and it's about everything, right? It's a community-based show that we do. We talk about it all the time. It's about creating community within any community. We don't care.
Nice.
And having Bill Champlin on was a lot of fun. We got to meet him and his wife, talk a little bit about what's going on, what his son is doing. His son, I didn't realize, is
I didn't
a good musician.
To your show, right.
And I didn't know that either. So it was really interesting to sort of get to know that and what he's doing and who he's writing for and playing with. And, then sort of seeing Bill, how he's morphed into being, nowadays, his son's a chaplain and doing his own thing. But, when he was with Chicago, it was absolutely phenomenal as well. And really between the takes, we also got to learn a lot about what it was like to be a rock star, at that time.
Take out the trash, rock star. I heard
exactly.
That.
And he's like, and that was part of that humility that we spoke about, right? He's like, I don't care how many thousands of people or millions of people were listening to me, that day. I'd still get home and have to take out the trash, right?
Absolutely.
And that is the humility I think that we always need to remember, no matter what level you're at.
That's a good point, a very good point. John, any closing statements today?
Well, Chris, we always love being around you, and we've talked a little bit about what you do. Tell us your company, tell us how to get a hold of you, what you specialize in. Tell us a little bit about the Rat Pack show so people know how to get a hold of you and hear you more often, because you're on the radio every week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the radio between the Rat Pack and a Spanish-speaking show that I do with another individual, so we're all over the place right there. But so I took my entire team, and so now we're over at Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation. We're known as the Kelso Group over there, and so we have offices here in Houston and here in Kingwood, or actually in Houston and Kingwood. Great group, great individuals. Pretty much when it comes to financing from A to Z, sort of what that Amazon does right there. We pretty much do everything in regards to it. A note that I have to give a big shout out to all my Fairway co-workers out there is in the month of October, we were the #1 FHA originator in the entire United States.
Wow, that's
so
huge. That's phenomenal.
it's pretty big stuff right there.
Right.
We're the sixth to seventh largest lender in the United States. This year, we're probably going to be $17-18 billion in origination.
Awesome.
So, and what we tell everybody is our goal is speed, service, and satisfaction. Those are the three key items right there. Do it fast, do it very good, and make sure your client is extremely happy. And, we can reach anytime. Obviously, my phone number, and I give out my cell phone all the time, 713-256-9113.